Civil Procedure. This outline is designed to acquaint you with commonly tested areas within the fields of federal jurisdiction and procedure. These are personal jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, venue, discovery, and joinder of multiple parties. Personal jurisdiction. Personal jurisdiction refers to the ability of a court to exercise power over a particular defendant or item of property. It may be categorized as in personam, in rem, or quasi in rem. The primary limitations on a court's power to exercise personal jurisdiction are found in the United States Constitution and state statutes. Subject matter jurisdiction. The subject matter jurisdiction of the federal courts is limited to that authorized by the Constitution as implemented by federal statute and decisional law. In general, it may be recognized as follows: diversity of citizenship jurisdiction. Diversity of the citizenship jurisdiction under 28 United States Code Section 1332 is grounded historically in the desire to protect out-of-state parties from local prejudice. Its main requirement is that there be complete diversity between opposing parties. Each plaintiff must be of diverse citizenship from each defendant. Also, the amount in controversy must exceed $75,000. Federal question jurisdiction. Federal question jurisdiction under Section 1331 presents fewer specific difficulties. The principal problem in this area is to determine when an action arises under federal law. A secondary problem is to know what types of actions are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the federal courts under other specific statutes. Removal jurisdiction. Removal jurisdiction allows defendants to remove an action brought in a state to a federal court if the federal court would have had original jurisdiction over the action. Supplemental jurisdiction. The doctrine of supplemental jurisdiction is codified under Section 1367 and includes under a single name the concepts of ancillary and pendent jurisdiction. In any form, supplemental jurisdiction allows a federal court to entertain certain claims over which it would have no independent basis of subject matter jurisdiction. That is, claims that do not satisfy diversity or federal question jurisdiction requirements. It is important to note that supplemental jurisdiction operates only after some claim has met the requirement. For federal subject matter jurisdiction, supplemental jurisdiction operates to bring additional claims into that case that arise from a common nucleus of operative facts as the original claim. Venue. Venue is the designation of the proper geographic district in which to bring an action. Venue will depend on where the cause of action arose and on the nature of the parties. Discovery. Discovery is the process by which litigants gather information from each other before trial, enabling them to know what evidence may be presented during the trial. The discovery issues that typically arise in court or during pretrial proceedings principally revolve around the scope of the examination allowed in discovery, the uses of depositions at trial, and the available methods of enforcing discovery rights. Multiple parties. Multiple party questions concern whether various types of joinder are permitted under federal law, and if so, whether there is a jurisdictional basis for a particular attempted joinder. The majority of the issues that arise in this area are grounded in the interpretation or application of statutes. statutes and the federal rules of civil procedure, and also require knowledge of subject matter jurisdictional basis, especially supplemental jurisdiction. Personal jurisdiction. There are two branches of jurisdiction: subject matter jurisdiction and personal jurisdiction. Subject matter jurisdiction involves the court's power over a particular type of case. Personal jurisdiction involves the ability of a court having subject matter jurisdiction to exercise power over a particular defendant or item of property. Personal jurisdiction involves the ability of a court having subject matter jurisdiction to exercise power over a particular defendant or item of property. This section discusses personal jurisdiction. Limitations on personal jurisdiction. The exercise of personal jurisdiction generally must be authorized by statute and constitutional. Statutory limitation: states have the power to decide over whom their courts may exercise jurisdiction. Therefore, the first place to look to determine whether the court has properly exercised personal jurisdiction usually is state law. If no state statute grants the court the power over the parties before the court lacks personal jurisdiction. Constitutional limitations. The Due Process Clause. The Due Process Clause of the Constitution places two restrictions on the exercise of personal jurisdiction. First, the defendant must have such contacts with the forum state that the exercise of jurisdiction will be fair and reasonable. Second, the defendant must be given appropriate notice of the action and an opportunity to be heard. Exercise of personal jurisdiction over a defendant in violation of these constitutional requirements is not valid, even if a statute purports to grant the court jurisdiction. Personal jurisdiction in federal courts. The main jurisdictional problem in state courts arises when the defendant over whom power is sought lives in another state. Since the federal borders encompass all states, one might expect that federal courts would encounter problems of personal jurisdiction only when the defendants were foreign nationals. However, Rule 4 of the Federal Rules provides that absent some special federal statute, each federal court must analyze personal jurisdiction as if it were a court of the state in which it is located. Thus, in most cases, the assessment of whether the court has personal jurisdiction over the defendant will be exactly the same in federal court as it is in state court. Rule 4 also authorizes defendants and parties required to be joined under the compulsory joinder rules, provided the party is served within 100 miles from the place where the summons was issued. Three types of personal jurisdiction. In personam jurisdiction. In personam jurisdiction exists when the forum has power over the person of a particular defendant. Jurisdiction over a plaintiff is generally not an issue because the plaintiff accedes to the court's jurisdiction by not because the plaintiff in personam jurisdiction. In personam jurisdiction exists when the forum has power over the person of a particular defendant. Jurisdiction over a plaintiff is generally not an issue because the plaintiff accedes to the court's jurisdiction by bringing suit in that court. In these cases, the court may render a money judgment against the defendant or may order the defendant to perform acts or refrain from acting. Such a judgment creates a personal obligation on the defendant and is entitled to full faith and credit in all other states. In other words, if a defendant is ordered to pay a sum of money to a plaintiff, the plaintiff may enforce the judgment against the defendant's property in any other state where that property is located. In realm, jurisdiction exists when the court has power to adjudicate the rights of all persons in the world with respect to a particular item of property. This jurisdiction is limited to situations where the property is located within the physical borders of the state and where it is necessary for the state to be able to bind all persons regarding the property ownership and use. This occurs with respect to actions for condemnation. Immediate domain cases, forfeiture of property to the state. For example, when the property is used for the unlawful transportation of narcotics and settlement of descendants' estates.